Hi there everyone, it's Cassie. Welcome back to my YouTube channel for another video. It is Stamptember, which means that there is a collaboration going on between Simon Says Stamp and various other companies, and today it's Trinity stamps. It also means that there are limited supplies of these, and so when they're sold out, they're sold out. And this is the stamp we have for you. It's the Ice Cream Gnomes. Are they not adorable? So we've got our stamp and our dies. I'm going to be using some sentiment stock. I have watercolor cardstock, and I have some various Distress Oxide inks. We'll talk about the stamp a little bit more when we get to it, but let's talk about our technique today. I have a piece of packaging. I'm going to trim this down because I want to use the packaging to actually disperse my color onto my watercolor cardstock. I want this to be or to at least have a little bit more control over what I'm actually doing here. So I've just cut down the packaging. We're doubling up our speed here. We're going to be doing a little bit of ink smushing, but with the packaging we'll have more control. So I've got my Distress Oxide colors. This is some cracked pistachio. I'm going to spritz that onto my packaging, just a couple splotches, and then we're going to just put that color down where I want it in that lower left-hand corner. And we're actually going to do this 3 different times because I'm going to make 3 different cards. We'll clean up our mess, and then we're going to move on to the next color, which is going to be some Fossilized amber. Now, like I said, these are Distress Oxides. You can do this with your Distress spray stains as well. You could do it with your inks, whatever you want to do, whatever medium. It's just the packaging gives you just a little bit more control. So there's our Fossilized amber. I'm able to really control where I put the color. Our next color is some Saltwater Taffy, and once again, same thing. We'll just put that down where we want it and clean up our mess in between. I kind of wanted a little bit of a rainbow look. I want the colors to overlap just a little bit. And then if you don't like how it is, or if you want to add more color, you can always go back and do that with the different colors and you know, layer them up however you want. So these are basically done. Our backgrounds are basically done. I do decide I want to bring in some gold color, so I'm using this Gansai Tambi Starry Night palette. I've had this for years, and I'm just adding water to this one right here, and you want that to have a lot of good water. And I've got my tiny paintbrush, and I'm going to splatter that all over the background. It's super, super subtle what I'm doing, but it does add a little bit of gold flecks to the background. And like I said, subtle, but it's there. Once we're done with all of that, we can set that off to the side to dry because we're going to move on to our stamping. And since I was playing with those Distress Oxides and watercolor paper, I decided I wanted to do some watercoloring. So I've got my Mini Misty, a piece of watercolor cardstock, and the 3 images that are just so darling from that Trinity Stamps Simon Says Stamp collaboration for Stamptember. I used a anti-static powder tool, and I'm inking up my stamp with some VersaFine Clair Nocturne ink. It is a nice crisp black ink. It's a pigment ink. And so I'm going to ink this up 3 times just to make sure that it is nice and black. And then as you can see off to the right hand side, I have some powder, and I also have a little tray. We're going to emboss these. This is a step you don't have to do. You could completely bypass this step, but I like to do this because I'm kind of impatient. And I like the look that it gives. So I'm going to heat set these after I clean up my mess, because otherwise I'll have that all over me or all over the floor or my desk or whatever. So we'll clean up our mess, and then I'll hit this with my heat tool. Now the reason I decided to do it, like I said, I'm lazy. I want to do watercolor, and what the embossing does is it provides little wells basically. So you can color one spot, and then you can basically color the very next spot by it, as long as you're not using too much water, and then you don't have to worry about those colors mixing too much. I'm going to use a combination of my Daniel Smith watercolors that I have. I don't have a lot of them, but this is one of the trays I have, and I'm also going to bring in some of those all 3 of those Distress Oxide sprays to watercolor with as well. We're going to bump up our speed to be about 4 times. Obviously I don't watercolor this quickly, but if you've ever watercolored before, you know it works pretty good to do it in layers, and sometimes you let it dry and then you can add another layer on top of it to give it a little bit more texture, which is basically what I'm doing here. I let them dry, I add some shadowing and shading, and then I might even come in with a darker color later on. As I said earlier, this is a part of the Stamptember, And if you're new to Stamptember, if you've never heard of it before, it's something that Simon Says Stamp does every year in September, where they collaborate with another company and they come up with some really great stamps. They're only available for as long as they are available, which means that once they're sold out, they're gone. But it does give you a fun opportunity to get an exclusive kind of stamp set if you're quick enough. I don't know how long this one will last. I feel like this one's going to go quickly because it's so stinking cute. Everybody loves the gnomes right now, and the fact that these are ice cream gnomes just makes me so happy. They're so cute. And so I'll have the link down below to the Simon Says Stamp store so that you can pick up this stamp and die if you'd like to, or you can, I think, just get the stamp by itself. I don't think you have to get the combo if you don't want. But again, when they're gone, they're gone. So we're heat setting sort of in between, so that way I can add those layers a little bit quicker on there. But I basically just stuck to the color palette of what I had with my Distress Oxide sprays. So I will bring in that cracked pistachio, fossilized amber, and our saltwater taffy. And the only other colors that I added are basically the neutrals. So we've got brown. I wanted to make this one look kind of like, maybe not quite a vanilla, little step up from a vanilla. And then the other one's going to get the brown beard also. But everything else is going to be colored in that same color palette, almost like a rainbow, but the colors are just those three colors that you see. I had so much fun watercoloring these. Watercolor has always been probably one of my very favorite mediums because I just love the end result. It's a little bit different, well, quite a bit different actually, than any sort of alcohol marker coloring. And I find that it definitely takes me longer to color with watercolors because you're also having to wait for things to sort of dry in between. But it's therapeutic for me. It always has been. I think watercolor was one of the things that really, when I first played with watercolor, I just fell in love with art. Art itself is great. Love all the aspects. We'll try any medium, but I just really love watercolor. And I don't do it near enough, that's for sure. And it might be because it does take so long to do it. And if you're trying to film, you're going to have to quadruple up your speed. But like I said, I do love the results, and I'm so happy with how these ended up turning out. And it was really fun, actually, to combine not only my Distress Oxide sprays, but also combine those with my Daniel Smith watercolors, which I had never done before. So, you know, first time for everything, I suppose. And again, you could do this with your ink pads also. Just, you know, put your ink onto your glass mat or whatever surface you might be using. I just found that since this was already liquefied, it was super easy to just use the Distress Oxide sprays. So I'm going through and I'm just using, you know, bits of that color for the fossilized amber. I'm going to heat set that a little bit, and then I'm going to come in and use a few more of those Daniel Smith colors, and we'll be just about done here. I'm going to add a darker kind of pistachio color, and then we're also going to add like more of a brown to our fossilized amber just to darken that up a little bit, add a little bit more depth there, and then we'll be about ready to move on to the next part. He's so cute with his little pistachio clothes. You'll also notice that in between I have that microfiber cloth, and I do wipe off my brush quite a bit. I tend to use a water brush for most of the time when I'm watercoloring, although I do have some really nice watercolor brushes as well. But take a look. They turned out really nice. Those are super fun. And now we can move on to stamping on our sentiment. So I have some black sentiment stock from Pear Blossom Press. This stuff is amazing. It's my favorite for doing any sort of embossing on when you're trying to do sentiments, because it's such a smooth cardstock that the powder doesn't really collect where it shouldn't collect. So we've got a detail white embossing powder. We're inking up our stamp with some juicy embossing ink, and then we'll cover that with our embossing powder. I'm going to do that 3 times, and then I do hit that with my heat tool. I missed that part, I'm not showing you, but I will now take the matching dies and we're going to put those over all of our images and our happy birthday. Notice that the die set also has dies for the smaller sentiments as well, so that's pretty cool. I have all of my card bases ready. We have our panels. We're just going to put those down over the top of our A2 card bases using some liquid glue. And then I do use different size foam tapes and strips all over the back of not only my images, but also my sentiments. So we're going to put him down. We'll peel off the release paper on our sentiment, and we'll put our happy birthday down. We'll do that for all 3 of the cards. And then I can't stop there. I have to use some embellishments. So I have these gold sparkle spots, which match the gold splatter that I did so well. And we're going to use our pickup stick along with our tidy tray and more of that liquid glue to adhere all of those little sparkle spots down. And once we get all of those, which I didn't go too crazy this time, surprisingly. Normally I go nuts when I'm putting embellishments down. I didn't go too crazy, but once we're done with that, that's going to finish off all 3 of our cards for today. I love how I've got this cute little set of happy birthday cards ready. If you like this video, hit that like button. Definitely consider subscribing if you haven't already done so. And as always, I will see you very soon in another video. Bye, everybody.